average price for Chanel bag has doubled in 4 years. Hermes bag has doubled in 4 years. Louis Vuitton is almost there. It is manufacturer exclusivity.
Can you spend tens of thousands of dollars on a handbag or a watch and actually say it's a good investment? My guest today definitely believes that. His company, Luxury Closet, is the leading luxury resale platform in the Middle East. I've known Kunal Kapoor since he founded his startup more than 10 years ago. But today, we talk about what it took to get his company to this point. Kunal, you run the largest luxury retail platform in the Middle East. You built it all from scratch. Now you have clients across more than 80 countries. What's the craziest sale that's actually been transacted through Luxury Closet?
That's a great question. We had a client come from Kuwait who wanted a very specific watch. It was a really nice Rolex Platinum with a Meteor dial. Very, very, very rare. And so this time around, we was like, ma'am, could you pay by card? And she was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to pay by card. She comes in, she rings her card to the credit card machine. And we realize our credit card machine is not able to take, and now this is like $80,000 transaction. We cannot take $80,000 in a credit card. And then we're like, well, how many credit card machines do we need? We need 5 credit card machines. So we start calling like all our delivery team members. We're like, man, guys, bring all the card machines back. And we're like, please, it'll just be like 20 minutes. We're going to get all the card machines back. Yeah, so we had to get all the card machines back and
ran transactions. Kunal, you're one of the longest standing founder CEOs in the Middle East tech ecosystem. I mean, I remember when you joined our very first Astrolabs program, it was like back in 2013.
I remember that.
You were founder and CEO of the Luxury Closet since then. And on the surface, it might look like the same thing since 2013. What's been the biggest change in your journey and in the company since then?
Marketplaces are complex and time-consuming to build, and to get all the parts right, which is the supply, the liquidity, the demand, the economics, it really takes time. So you don't solve all these problems at once. You kind of focus on different problems throughout that 12-year journey. So now what we have is a very well operating marketplace. We're at nearly 100% sell through. So that means everything we put online sells within the year.
That's incredible.
So now, early on it is build supply, then it is match demand to supply, then it is work on the economics, and now we have a really amazingly well-working machine. And now it is, how do we take this and take it to Saudi, take it to Kuwait, take it to Qatar. So let's say a different part of the business.
And what's been the biggest pivot that you've made since the beginning?
I would say the economics are the biggest pivot. The sector is challenging. When I would talk to retailers, one of the conversation points would be, what's an average kind of retail gross margin? Retail gross margins are high, 50, 60%.
There's a lot of money on the table.
Yeah. And especially if you're a brand owner and operator, your margin is 90%. So I'm sure a Louis Vuitton manufactures a bag for $100 and it sells it for $1,000, maybe even $2,000. So there's a lot of margin there. They need that because the costs are high.
Yeah, you got to feed that machine.
Exactly.
Marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you are in a marketplace business, margins are low. So I think for us, the biggest pivot has been to get to profitability, and it really changes the way you think about the business.
Yeah, let's talk about the economics, because I know you were at Louis Vuitton before, actually, and so you've seen this on both sides. Tell us about how the economics actually work for the luxury retail e-commerce. What's the drivers? What do you need to get right?
Historically, luxury retail, let's say e-tail, has been buy merchandise, right, from the brands, sell 50-60% of that merchandise at full price, then sell the balance merchandise at discounted prices. That's historically been the business. If I wonder who's really done it well, oh gosh, there's like one company, it's Mytheresa, who's done it very, very well. In the department store business, when you go offline, there have been some successes, but has there been any company that has done it consistently well for decades? I mean, some of these companies are, like take Le Bon Marché, take Galeries Lafayette, they're 50, 100 years old, some of these companies. They've gone through a lot of ups and downs. So I would say it's a really tough sector.
What makes it so hard?
It's a very good question. So I would say first, the brands have a lot of control. The brands may choose to work with you or not work with you. Yeah. Especially as an e-tailer, brands may decide that they don't want this distribution. They want to sell less product rather than more product.
Which is like counterintuitive. You're like, why? But they're trying to constrain supply.
Correct. So look at Remova as an example. LVMH bought the brand, and then they killed the distribution. They removed distribution from nearly all multi-brand outlets. You can get it at Gallery Fayette maybe, but it's just Remova stores. So
Illusion of exclusivity, I guess.
yeah, exactly. Well, it is
exclusivity.
It is exclusivity.
Yeah. Manufactured exclusivity.
It is manufactured exclusivity. So even if you look at the luxury industry over the last 3-4 years, they're not growing volumes. They're growing value. So average purchase has growing. Average price for Chanel bag has doubled in 4 years. Hermes bag has doubled in 4 years. Louis Vuitton is almost there. So
it's like
they're not growing by selling volumes.
They're growing actually by constraining the supply and increasing the perceived value.
Yes, if you go in to ask the brands why, look, they're crafting these products. They take time to craft. Can they scale production at that pace? Maybe not. Maybe there is no choice for them because they can't sell they can't manufacture maybe 2 times the volume in 4 years.
Yeah.
Rolex can't.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's
but maybe on the bag side, I
justification.
don't buy it. But yeah, we'll see.
But look, again, it's different. We're in the modern economy. Everything is mass produced. Silicon Valley companies, Apple will go to China and they'll say, listen, manufacture this at scale, and they'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
But here we're talking about companies that have been manufacturing products in a certain way for a century, maybe. Yeah. Everything is made by craftsmen. Machines are Italian, German. The tradition is passed down generations.
This is not GPUs that you're adding.
It's not. We're just not.
Yeah.
It is. There really are genuine constraints for this, which is also one of the reasons for us to exist. These products are meant to last generations. There's a lot going on there. To nail that supply chain has taken time, and to get that supply chain to be profitable and the most profitable in the world has taken some ingenuity.
So what's your formula for success? How have you been able to make the supply chain work?
We stumbled into a business which was very innovative. Nobody else was doing it. In fact, when I started it, I hadn't heard of The Real. That's the US player doing $2 billion in transaction value. I hadn't heard of SDA Collective, another $1 billion in transaction value. StockX, another $2 billion. I hadn't heard of it. So it was a blank canvas. I had to innovate, and that led to a culture of innovation.
On the culture of innovation, what have you done that's different from what other players might be doing in other parts of the world to address these markets?
I think the next thing I would go to is that there is definitely an element of Dubai in it. And that meant we were in close proximity to India, which is where our engineering team is. We had a multitude of nationalities coming and working with us. So we were building a global business from day one. The team was, French, Italian, Indian, Lebanese, all combined.
That's like all you. Yeah.
So all combined,
Yes.
So that's the kind of talent that is coming in. And we have, because of this talent coming in, because of the place we live, we have a unique perspective on the world. The second is the client. So we have unique clients. We have, as I said, the highest per capita spend in the world. So the clients are very demanding. They want the best. They're used to walking into Louis Vuitton, having the red carpet rolled out for them. They want us to do the red carpet. Now, we're not Louis Vuitton, so we have to figure out, unique ways of doing this and meeting expectations. So you put great talent, multinational talent pool, kind of the startup culture, and clients constantly giving us feedback, and all of this is happening in Dubai. I think that was very, very important for our success.
You said the way that the team has come together in order to develop for a global business from day one. And when you're in a larger market, maybe you don't have to think about outside. You could think just locally. Here, one of the mixed blessings of being in a smaller relative market like Dubai is that the truly successful companies need to crack international. And how did you design from the beginning?
So it's true. It really is a mixed blessing. Sometimes, I think grass is greener on the other side. And I'm like, it would be so nice if I was in the US. Just like 300 million people, Japan, 120 million people, Germany, France, like 80, 100 million people. that would be pretty amazing. Just one market, a large market, no barriers in terms of borders.
A lot more competition, probably.
But yes, exactly. That's the flip side of it. The good part about Dubai is that the client base is international and people trust the brand. So people are buying from a Dubai company, and that's a really cool thing to do. Yeah, that's a trustable thing to do. We had clients from on day one from the United States. I remember the first month we shipped a bag to the US. It's really about the product. We're getting these products. A Chanel bag is a Chanel bag. They're unique products. So you may not find in the US what you're looking for. You may find that exact color, size, price here in Dubai. So you may end up buying from us.
But I think you mentioned trust. And trust, it was incredibly difficult for us building, an e-commerce that was selling branded new products in a region that wasn't quite used to it. What did you do in order to build the trust in a resale environment?
I think the most important that is to deliver. There'll always be early adopters. No matter how crazy your business is, you're going to find somebody who will make the first transaction.
Yeah, if you get the right supply, probably somebody's going to.
No, but I'm thinking, no matter how crazy your business is,
there's somebody at the beginning of that
there
curve.
is an audience of one for that business.
Yeah, okay.
So there's always early adopters. And early adopters, they transact, they give you some feedback, and you deliver for them. The question is how much adoption can you possibly get, right? It needs to be in the millions, right? But I think the most important thing to do is, you get the adopters, you deliver, you get a broader base, you deliver, you get a broader base, you deliver. So delivery is very, very important to larger and larger audience sets, and then people trust you. The second is we have to be quite transparent. So when we take the product photographs, we don't hide anything. We try to, there's a scratch, we want to show it.
Yeah, you're going to magnify the problems.
And sometimes sellers come to us and say, but that's nothing. Why are you magnifying it?
Yeah.
And we're like, you know what? We're playing the middleman here. Our job is to be objective about the product. That definitely leads to a surprise, a aha moment on the behalf of the buyers, because they get pleasantly surprised with the quality of the products when they buy. So be transparent there. So deliver, be transparent. That's the two most important.
Any favorite early adopter stories?
We had, I remember, and this is our first office. And in our first office, we had one table and one chair for me, because I was the only person there.
You're the boss and the only person. And
we had one table for clients. So when people would come in an interview, the wrong question to ask was, where will I sit? Bring your own chair. And how difficult is that to solve? And I remember in this kind of a setup, we had a client, she really understood the concept and she really was in need of the service. And then one evening, she called me. She's like, Kunal, come to the office. And I was like, it's 9 p.m. She's like, yes, but come on, it's Ramadan. Who goes to sleep at 9 p.m.? Come on out. I was like, okay, let me see. I got some bags for you. And I was like, how many? She's like, I don't know, 200. And I was like, I'll be right there.
200?
So I go, she's there with all her cousins. She walks in. It's really nice to meet the whole family. But they're rolling in large suitcases filled with bags. And at that point in time, she's like, okay, we're going to go for dinner. Thank you very much. And I was like, wait a second. I have to give you a receipt. I have to count. She's like, no, Kunal, we trust you. And that is the foundation of the relationship.
Wow.
I very quickly drew out a list, which is 35 Louis Vuitton bags, 20 Dolce & Gabbana bags. And I gave the list to her. And that was it.
Estimated value of this whole haul?
Gosh, I don't know. It was, maybe $300,000-$400,000 of product.
Kunal, I trust you.
Yeah, that was it. Kunal, trust you. That's a responsibility you have to take very seriously.
That is the definition of an early adopter.
Yeah, that's true.
When did you feel that feeling that what I'm building here, it's real, and there's people who, this is going to be a big business?
I think the definition of big has changed. So yeah, around these stories, when I'm telling you, you get traction like this and you think that, this is going to be a big business. The definition of big changes. So I started the business, I was like, listen, it'll be amazing to do $2 million in sale. Can you imagine if I had run a business $2 million in sale?
Yeah.
We did that in year 2.
In year 2, wow.
Yeah. So
let's fast forward. Where are you at now? In terms of scale, in terms of...
We're selling now about 100,000 units a year. We're bringing in 100,000 units, selling about 100,000 units a year. And that's pretty good scale. But again, the question is, what is, your definition of scale changes. If you look at the kind of the global leader, they're selling 4 million units, right?
And this market should be a juicy one for this, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great market. It's a
the Middle
fast-growing
East is a
market.
fast-growing. I mean, it's a big luxury market.
Saudi is completely untapped yet for us. We're a few years into Saudi. I just opened a warehouse, so there's a lot of room for growth.
I wanted to ask you about this topic of luxury collectibles, which is all the rage and has been a growing area taken more seriously as an actual area of investment, especially with a lot of the growth in value that's been happening. Do you partake? Do you invest in luxury items yourself?
The answer is yes, for sure. Let me rewind back. So I've been giving this some thought, yeah, and I think what is normal is your first investment is a car. When you first buy your first car, it's probably 50, 60, 70% of your assets. Then you probably buy a home, and the car becomes whatever 5% or 10%, and your home becomes the majority of it. Then where do you go from there? You probably get some liquid investments like in funds and something like this, and then eventually you start getting into other alternate investments, collectibles and things like this. I have friends who have very nice cars. They don't drive them.
Yeah, they collect the cars.
They collect the cars. Watches is another one, and then comes kind of all of this. Now, in the new age economy, people tend to take that and put it right in the front, which means you can be 20 years old and you say, forget about the car, I don't want a car, I'll rent a car. Forget about the house, who needs a house? Let me buy some Bitcoin, watches. Let me buy some trading cards. There's a lot of things.
It's interesting. You're putting Bitcoin and watches in the same category. Interesting.
They're highly correlated.
Why is that?
They're both a store of value.
Yeah.
I think very simply put, and they can be exchanged for fiat currency with low transaction fees. Bitcoin, of course, the transaction fee is very low, but for watches as well, you can exchange a watch for sub 5% transaction fee, and the watch can grow in value just like Bitcoin. There is volatility there, just like Bitcoin. And you see when Bitcoin is going up, watch sales are going up because people are, some of these people are getting rich and they're buying watches.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of correlation there.
I never thought about that. Yeah. That's interesting. Now, what's been your biggest win in luxury collectibles?
I've been collecting some things, but I have never sold them. So I'm still in the stage of collecting things. Will I win or not? I don't know.
You're in the long game.
I'm in the long game. So I think maybe next year or something will be a better place to answer this question. But my view on this is,
what collectible are you most proud that you actually got in at the time that you did?
Bitcoin.
Again, you're putting that in the same category.
Yeah,
what
exactly.
physical collectible?
Watches, I would say. So let's go back pre-COVID. I was in the Mall of Emirates, walked into the AP, the Audemars Piguet store, and these guys are trying to sell me a watch.
Usually they're telling you, get out of my store.
Exactly. Now they're trying to get you out of the store. More recently, I walked into a Patek Philippe store, and the gentleman spoke with me, and while speaking with me, escorted me out of the door.
In the same motion.
In the same motion. Nice to meet you. By the time I was done the conversation, I was out of the door.
Smooth.
Very smooth operator. Wow. So it has turned around, yeah? The watch industry is not the same. I remember, if you go back even a few years before that, there was the conversation that the Apple Watch has disrupted the industry because they took over the wrist. So if you take over the wrist, where are you going to wear a watch? You're not going to wear a watch, right? So that led to a kind of decline in the sales of the switch-on watch industry. So if you bought a watch 2019 and before, any of the top 3 or 4 brands,
that was a good investment.
That was a good investment.
So what are the signals in this space, luxury collectibles? What signals should folks be looking at to tell if it's a good time to buy or something that is actually worthwhile, that's going to hold value or actually increase in value?
Really good question, yeah. I think the best thing to do is to see if you can get a product directly from the store. Rolex, AP, Patek, Hermes, to some counts Chanel, and That's pretty much where it stops.
These are the blue chips.
This is the blue chip stocks. So if you can get from the store, you're buying it at the price, the store is selling you at. Now, the price change is anywhere from 5 to 10% a year. So the retail price is going to change 5 to 10% a year. But I don't think the accessibility will change. So the product will always be difficult to access, and there will always be a healthy resale market where you can sell these products multiple times the store price. We start from there. I think in the watch market, there's really good data. So there's a lot of players that provide you data on the watch market. So you can see as an industry how what prices are tracking, just like you can see how home prices are tracking. Then
Where should people learn about this stuff? I mean, any suggestions on how to get smarter on collectibles?
So for the watch, I think Chrono24 is a good source, and there's also like price trackers online. There's companies that just do price tracking for the watches industry.
Yeah.
For the leather goods industry, it's just going to go up. 5%,
heard it here.
10% a year
Yeah.
is just going to keep on going up forever.
I'd like to ask you to put your investor hat on and imagine you have $10,000, early career, you want to be able to put it into any asset that you think has potential. Would love to get your opinion on that and what you would suggest to our viewers.
What I would suggest is not what I did, hence I suggest it. I think a good thing to do is, look, I think first is you have to think, do you have a business to create? So I think if you have a business to create, the best investment you can make is in that business. And that's where you will build a lot of expertise. You'll create more value over time than giving the money to somebody else and banking on that they will create value over time. That would be definitely at the top of my list. We're entrepreneurs, so
Yeah.
the business is
Seed your own business, basically.
exactly.
Take a risk.
Exactly. Yeah. Other than that, I think if you're looking to de-risk out of this, a lot of people told me, hey, listen, just do the S&P index. So maybe I should have listened to them before. So do the S&P index. If you want to diversify a bit, I think the Indian stock market is really good. REIT is going to be great over time. It's now the fastest growing G20 economy, and it'll continue to do so. I'm very positive on India, and so that would be another place that you can put the money.
And if you wanted to use $10,000 to get into any collectible right now, which one would you recommend? Or like spend it something on the luxury closet. What would you recommend to somebody?
I would recommend that you browse every day to look for where the value is low. So I think you have to find the right trade, and you can be flexible across categories by finding the right trade. And I would go back to the same brands. So the 3-4 watch brands. In terms of jewelry, it's Cartier and Van Cleef & Arpels. That's the two brands that I think that you can, if you're able to get it at a good resale price, absolutely, it's a good decision to do it. And then Hermes bags. I think a Hermes Birkin or a Kelly bag is going to appreciate forever. So buy something and don't use it.
You've been running the company, Luxury Closet, since 2013 or 12, actually, right?
Yeah, 12.
2012. You're the constant. How have you changed personally?
Oof, that's a good question. I've got white hair.
Yeah, that's clear. I see that. Yeah. You and I both.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you reflect on that? I mean, as a leader, sometimes, I mean, that's the challenge of being at the top of the top, right? It's like, who's pushing you, and what are you reflecting on your own development? How have you changed?
So those are two different questions. So how do you think about your own development, and how have you changed? So let's take the own development question. So I think, informally you learn from people.
What has your team taught you about yourself?
First, that I am a positive person. I'm a nice person, but I'm very serious about getting done. I don't have to be a jerk to get done. So that has been kind of a fundamental. That's my DNA. The second is, it's my job to think ahead. Yeah, and I have to have a really good formula, a really good kind of method to think ahead and make sure, not just like today, not this month, but a quarter down, 2 quarters down, 3 quarters down, a year down, how might we be different? Yeah. So I think that's another thing that.
They turn to you for that, basically. There's nobody else who's.
No, I think we've learned together how to work on things 4 quarters away and a year away, and to have a really good system where we do that. And I fundamentally had to become really good, not at fighting fires, because fighting fires is important, but also structurally thinking, guys, where do we need to be same time next year?
This is one of the biggest challenges, right? It's like riding between, especially as the founder who started the company, you have like a tendency to get into every detail and want everything to, the more you do that, the less you can do looking at the entire forest, right?
So you have to learn which fires not to fight.
And actually let the team handle things.
Yep, absolutely. Getting that right is important. I think third is, people say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, ultra marathon. So how do you
ultra marathon, right?
For ultra marathon. So how do you mentally and physically are able to fight the distance?
Yeah.
And again, this is something like, we were really going very hard, like in the first few years. I remember I had an investor saying, hey, listen, I was a really young company. Hey, listen, how do your cohorts look like? And I was like, cohort? What's a cohort?
What's a cohort?
Google cohort. And then I was like, download data, build cohort on Excel overnight. And in the morning, we're like, here's what my cohorts look like, right? So perhaps now I know there's another way to answer the same question.
Yeah.
And I don't need to, perhaps we're too small a company to do that. We don't have enough data. But there's another data point where I can answer that question. So that's how you kind of operate, like just give it 120%. Then as you mature, you have to figure out how to give it constantly the 100%, right? You have to, your output has to be very, very consistent. And my output has to be that consistent for another 10 years. So what is the kind of person that I need to be in order to get that output consistently? And what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? So I think that really changes you as a person.
That's amazing. So what's coming next for you? I mean, you see yourself continuing with this for the next decade. What's both for you personally as well as the future of the platform as it stands?
So we're scratching the surface. The penetration rates in resale in the Middle East are 3-4%. In the US is 30%. 1/3 of the industry is.
It's a massive gap.
It's a huge gap. We're 0.25% of the 0.3%, something like that, of the retail market. The largest player in the US is, 10 times, 2.5-3% of the retail market. So just these are
this
like
is even just within staying here, basically. Yes.
Exactly. You don't need to go anywhere. Just within staying here.
And other markets that you're looking at?
It would be pretty amazing to be a real global company. We have clients from 80 countries. We have a team in UAE, Saudi, Kuwait, Qatar, India. We have one person in the Philippines. So yeah, we're clients from way beyond those countries. Yeah, it would be pretty awesome. It's on our radar, but I think this is another 2 years down the line.
And it seems like a lot of companies from outside of this Gulf region would be salivating over the kind of position that you have right now in the Gulf, which is a very interesting market itself. So,
but that also leads people to come and try it out, and leads to some competition where people think its grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah. And then potentially somebody might come in and say it might be easier just to buy you.
As a founder, I think you have to constantly think of the exit question. As a venture-backed company, you have to exit.
Yeah.
You don't have to exit. You don't have to exit.
You don't have a good track record of exiting stuff, though, given your collectibles.
But it is exactly the differentiation that I'm going to in saying the company has to exit. You don't have to necessarily exit,
you could
right?
Continue on.
I think it's important to have a kind of a long-term vision.
Yep.
I think it's great to be in a business where you love, and.
Well, it's clear you do. Congratulations on all the success, and I'd love to wrap up actually with a quick fire round of questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, I love those. Let's go for it.
Let's do it. Your closet, minimalist or maximalist?
Minimalist.
Most ridiculous fake you caught?
Gosh, what's the most ridiculous one? I think like the Hermes bags that we get. Some of the times we get Hermes bags. It's really obvious. Like, it's not have you seen those Walmart Birkins?
Somebody tried to pass it off.
It's $30, and sometimes people will send products that are obviously made for $30 in as Birkins, and they think that it may be real.
Complete the sentence. Never trust a seller who?
Sends the same item in bulk.
Most expensive item sold on Luxury Closet.
An Audemars Piguet watch, solid gold.
How much in dollars?
I think this was 85, 90,000.
Luxury or tech, which is harder to master?
Luxury.
Why is that?
It's a business of micro detail. And it takes decades for companies to get all of those micro details right. Tech is fly by the wheel, iterate quick business.
First luxury item you bought ever?
I bought a IWC watch that was nice. Should have bought a Rolex, but IWC watch.
Best advice that stems from your Louis Vuitton days?
The people that you work with and you surround yourself with, that's the most important decision you can make.
And single best luxury investment right now?
A Hermes Birkin or a Kelly bag.
All right, Kunal. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Money Moves.
Pleasure.